Warning, this video contains subject matter that may be disturbing to some viewers. So let's get the housekeeping out of the way. This video is for educational and entertainment purposes only. All of the information gathered is from news sources or an internet search, and any opinions expressed by me is just that, my opinion. With that being said, let's jump into it. Welcome to this episode of True Crime and Mysterious Cases. So today I want to talk about the murder case of Laci Peterson. And if for some reason you've been living under a rock and you haven't heard of this case, just stick around because I'm going to be doing an overview right after I give the update. Laci went missing and was later found murdered along with her unborn son, Connor, in 2002. In 2005, her husband, Scott Peterson, was convicted of the murders and sentenced to death. Now, just recently, in August of 2004, his death penalty conviction was overturned, which means that he'll be getting a new sentencing hearing sometimes in the near future. Now, this is not a whole new trial. He is still convicted. This is just a new sentencing trial since the death penalty was overruled. So we'll see if he gets life in prison. His family and his attorney are pushing, though, for a new trial, saying that they have new evidence that supports his innocence. They're saying that law enforcement didn't really look at anybody else other than Scott for this murder, and that they have witnesses that law enforcement did not interview, saying that they saw Laci after Scott reportedly killed her. They're also saying that because he was convicted on mostly circumstantial evidence, that there's reason to believe that he's innocent and that the wrong man is in prison. But as of today, he has only been granted a new sentencing hearing, and he has not been granted a new trial, although they are pushing for that, so we'll just have to wait and see. It'll be interesting to see if his lawyers bring forth any of the new evidence that they say they have during his new sentencing hearing. And will it be enough to warrant a new criminal trial? If he does get a new criminal trial, then it's anybody's guess what could happen from there. He could be found not guilty and released from prison, or the guilty verdict could stand and he could get life in prison. He could even be found guilty and sentenced to a lesser term and be released for time served. One thing for sure is that if there is a new criminal trial, this is just going to bring it all back for the family, the friends, the people who loved Laci are going to have to relive this nightmare over again almost 20 years later. And that's all the information that I have on the update. So now I want to do an overview of the case to refresh some of your memories or for people who may not have ever heard of this case. So Laci Peterson was a 27-year-old pregnant married woman from Modesto, California. She was due to give birth really any day. She was over 8 months pregnant with her son, her first child, Connor. It was on Christmas Eve, December 24th, 2002, when Laci was reported missing after she apparently didn't return home from walking her dog in the park. Her husband, Scott, would say that he had last seen Laci about 9:30 that morning, when he was leaving to go fishing in Berkeley Marina, which was about 90 miles away from their home. He said at that time, Laci was preparing to take their dog for a walk in the park nearby their home, and then she was going to do some shopping because they were going to have Christmas Eve dinner with Laci's parents. Reportedly, a neighbor of the Petersons found their dog, whose name was Mackenzie, wandering in the neighborhood with his leash still attached. So the neighbor put him back in their backyard, thinking he had just escaped the backyard, and didn't see or notice anything wrong. Scott said that he came home later that afternoon from his fishing trip and found that Laci wasn't home. He did notice that her car was still there, but he said that he wasn't concerned, that he assumed she had been picked up by her mother and that they were preparing for the upcoming meal that they were going to have together later that night. He said that he ate some leftover pizza, took a shower, and when he got out of the shower, he had a message from Laci's stepfather inquiring on what time they were going to be coming over for dinner. So he called her parents back and asked if Laci was with them, and they told him that she wasn't. So her stepfather called law enforcement and reported Laci missing. Her mother asked Scott to immediately meet her at that park that Laci was supposedly walking Mackenzie at. They searched the park, around the park, for hours. They never found Laci. They never found any indications that Laci had ever even been there. When police arrived to their home, they found Laci's purse in her closet with her ID, her keys, her sunglasses, all still there. They also found that Scott had washed his clothing that he had worn, which Scott claims he washed because he had got wet fishing. And on the kitchen table was a phone book opened up to a full-page ad for a defense attorney. The investigators would take Scott in that evening for an interview, and suspiciously, he told them that he had been golfing that day. And later, when nobody had seen him at the golf course, is when he said, he had gone fishing at the Berkeley Marina. The main investigator on the case would later say that he did suspect Scott from the very beginning. His demeanor was very calm, cool, and collective. He didn't ask him any questions. He didn't ask him for any updates or follow-ups. He didn't even ask them for their business card. A massive search would ensue looking for Laci, and it would cover hundreds of miles and involved like 900 volunteers besides law enforcement. The case would also attract major media attention, and Laci's beautiful smiling face would appear on television stations all over the world. Because of all this media attention, on December 30th, a woman named Amber Fry would contact law enforcement to tell them that she had been dating Scott Peterson. Amber would agree to record phone conversations between her and Scott. Scott had told Amber that he was traveling overseas for work, and during one of those phone conversations, Scott was telling Amber that he was at the Eiffel Tower celebrating New Year's, and you could hear people in the background. But it turns out Scott was actually at his wife's vigil.
I think that you're there. I'm near the Eiffel Tower. New Year's celebration is unreal. The crowd is huge.
The crowd's huge?
Amber.
Yes, I'm here.
Amber, you're there. I can't hear you right now, but I'll call you on your New Year's.
Okay, I'll hear from you then.
Amber, miss you. I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Now, it needs to be said that Amber had no idea that Scott Peterson was a married man when she started dating him. She was set up with him on a blind date by a mutual friend, and Scott told Amber that his wife had passed away. As soon as she heard that Scott's wife was actually pregnant and missing, she immediately contacted law enforcement, was fully cooperative with the investigation, and later testified against Scott in the murder trial. On April the 13th, 2003, a couple walking their dog would find the body of an infant boy on the shoreline not far from the Berkeley Marina, where Scott Peterson said he was fishing the morning his wife Laci went missing. The very next day, the torso of a woman who had recently been pregnant was also found on the shoreline. She was wearing tan pants and a maternity bra. Her body would wash up just a mile from where the baby boy's body was found. She was decapitated and missing her limbs. DNA would prove that the body was Laci's and that the baby was the biological son of Laci and Scott Peterson. On April the 18th, Scott would be arrested for the murders of Laci and Connor. When Scott was arrested, he had dyed his hair a blonde color, and in his car, he had clothing, camping gear, his brother's ID, $15,000 in cash, and numerous weapons. Police theorized that Scott was preparing to go on the run. The case against Scott would be mostly circumstantial. They did, however, find in Scott's boat a pair of pliers, I believe it was, that had what was later determined as a piece of Laci's hair entwined in it. Scott was convicted of the murders of Laci and Connor, and he was sentenced to death. But as we discussed earlier, the death sentence has been overturned, so he's awaiting a new sentencing hearing. While we're waiting for any new updates in the case, let's remember Laci and Connor. Laci's life was taken way too soon, and Connor didn't even get the chance to start his life. That's going to conclude this episode of True Crime and Mysterious Cases. As always, thank you for joining us, and don't forget to hit those like, subscribe, and notification buttons so that you don't miss any future episodes.